First, let's go to the Salesforce Lightning Experience app launcher. If you're using Classic, you just use the app picker on the other side and choose Appointiv. And then once Appointiv loads, we're going to switch over to the Configure screens. And the Configure screen is where all the admin magic happens. You'll notice all down the left-hand side we've got a list of tabs that you can go into. The first one at the top is selected first, which is Application Settings, which follows along with our step-by-step. So we'll first go into Application Settings, and then we can go in here and change the, it says Edit Labels. This is really the metadata around things like your location, category, service provider. So we'll change all these through here. While I'm changing that, I'll just say that this is the area where you really customize it to fit your business type. So if you're medical related, then you're going to call your customers patients. If you're financial service, you're going to probably call your service providers advisors. So you just go through here and do all that, and then finally get down to save, and it's going to flow through the rest of the application. All those names are going to change anywhere they appear within the app and also on your booking form.
So you can just double check and see right here we've got office now, where that used to say location, so that just kind of flows through. So that's kind of everything we want to do on this tab for the walkthrough, but I do want to show you the rest of the areas on here just to give you an idea of other things that you can change. So you've got the ability to set up your external calendar sync. So we do have a real-time two-way calendar sync with external calendars like GCal, Outlook, Exchange, like 5 different servers. So we do real-time sync with the external calendars for your service providers to their personal calendars. So if that's Outlook or Exchange server, Office 365, even iCal, there's about 5 different calendars that it syncs to. It's a really easy setup process that we'll go through later. But you can control here whether you sync sort of outgoing, so Salesforce events or Appointiv events going out to that external calendar. And the next one is whether you sync events that they have in their external calendar back into Salesforce. And within that, you get to choose whether or not you include a description of what that event is. So this is really helpful for, this is really the big step in getting a service provider's actual availability. So if you've got open scheduling where you've got the person available from Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, well then you don't want to double book on top of their other existing appointments they might have in their other calendar if they live out of that calendar. So the events that are in that calendar will come across and block off time if this is selected, and because of privacy reasons you might want to do it without a description. So the next thing is the reminders and rescheduling. You can determine whether cancellations are allowed a certain amount of time in advance. So you can do 0 to 7 days in advance because you might not want people canceling last minute. That's where you set that up. And then also reminders, you can just determine how far in advance you send out the email reminders. And then this last bit is appointment lead time. So that is how many hours in advance can somebody go to your web form or click on a link that you might have sent them and actually book into your calendar. So I typically will do something like I'll put in 12 hours or something like that, because I don't want to go to bed or go home and stop looking at my calendar, go to bed at night, and then wake up in the morning and somebody has booked an 8 a.m. meeting with me and I wasn't aware, right? So you just put a few hours in there in advance, prevent that from happening. But you can also have it where you've got 0 in there in case you just want to have people be able to book right at the last minute. So it's up to you. Next is this lead versus contacts. This is a sort of a big thing. If you use leads, it's quite important. So you when you do use leads, you're probably going to have a qualification or a conversion process. So you probably want to have new customers coming in from your web form going in as leads. But if you don't, it's quite a lot easier. You just leave this the way it is. But if you do change it to lead, it's going to give you all this information that tells you that what you're doing is a pretty big deal. So you got to watch out for it. So just read all those little notes, and then it's going to show you a mapping here. And what this is all about is when somebody books from your web form, we don't know at the time until after they've clicked, book the appointment, whether they already exist in the system. So if they exist in the system already as a lead or a contact, we're going to map them and just put that appointment against that existing record. If they don't exist in the system and you've got contact selected here, they're going to go in as a new contact. But if you have lead selected here, then the system has a choice. Like it'll say, okay, if they are already in the system as a contact or lead, put the information on that object. But if not, create a new lead. And so because of the fact that it can go into two different objects, we just need to make sure that all the fields that might end up on your web form exist on both those objects. And that's what this is all about. So this will actually look through the system and find any fields that are in the lead object that are like custom fields and custom fields in the contact, and it'll show you if there's a mismatch. So you as an admin can go back in there and say, oh, well, I've got customer ID in my web form that I'm asking for, but leads actually don't have a customer ID. Maybe I should just take that out of the web form. Or you might find that you've got something that you want to add into the other. But either way, this gives you the ability to see that quite clearly, which is good. And then deduplication. This is one I would just say don't touch it most likely unless you're really sure what you're doing. What'll happen here is it's going to say these are the fields that we're looking at that are going to tell us whether to add that person that is filling in an appointment on the web form. This is going to tell us where to stick that information. So if the email and the last name matches up, so you might have a husband and wife, or you might have two people that are John Smith, but they're gonna have two different emails, right? So they're both gonna have last name. So you gotta have last name Smith and email, John Smith 123 at Gmail or whatever. So this is pretty powerful with just these two. And you'll notice by default it's the operation is and, so it's like it has to have email and last name. Now, if you want to get complicated with it, you can certainly do that. You can just have you might have like a ID or customer ID or something like that, student ID. Anyway, I would just definitely say don't put this in the hands of a novice, because what you'll end up doing is you might overcomplicate your rule, and then the system never finds that there's a match, and everybody that books anything is going to always come in as a new, and you're just going to end up with a whole bunch of new records in your system. Not a terrible thing, but data quality is something people constantly want to make sure you stay on top of. And the final thing here is error handling. So this is going to be, so what we're doing here is we've got the ability to kind of see when errors even in the background happen in the app. So like if a trigger or something or a process in the background is sending out an error, just put your own email in there, or you can even, if we've talked to you through our support channel and we've asked you to turn it on, you might even send it to us so we can get those sort of logs on the errors, and that will help us to figure out what might be occurring, because you'd be surprised. There's lots of times when customers have made customizations to their Salesforce. It gets pretty complicated to make an app that fits into that environment perfectly. So we'll be able to really get detailed information here if you capture those errors. It's just an error log capture.